My name is Emily Bjornskert. I use she, her pronouns, and this is Aeriel Wauhob. She is our community engagement coordinator here at the MaST Center, but she also is our marine mammal stranding coordinator for this area. So she'll be talking about seals on our beach. So I'll let you kind of take it away and introduce yourself. But yeah, here we go.
Awesome. So yes, as Emily was saying, I wear many hats here at the Mass Center Aquarium, and so this is just one part of my job. Today, I will be talking about specifically our stranding team, how we respond to strandings, kind of things that you can look out for, and who to call if you happen to see a seal on your beach. So I'm going to share my screen here. Awesome. Okay, so there's a seal on my beach. If you ever happen to have a seal on your beach, or you're at a local beach and you see an animal or a marine mammal that you think is either in distress or might need somebody to come take a look at it, that is what the stranding team does here at the MaST Center Aquarium. And so first things first, what is a marine mammal? So all mammals are warm-blooded. So that means they can regulate their body temperature from the inside. Then you have the cold-blooded, so think of like fish or reptiles. Their body temperature is regulated by the outside temperature. So with us, warm-blooded, we are endotherm, so we regulate our own temperature. We also breathe through lungs. So again, humans, we have our lungs that we breathe the air. Dogs, marine mammals, they're also breathing air, which means they have to come back to the top of the surface in order to breathe. So they're not like fish, they don't have gills. They do have to breach the surface at certain intervals in order to continue breathing. Also, marine mammals and humans and other mammals have fur or hair. So on humans, we've got our fur, that is our hair. And then even our whales will have smaller, tinier bits of hair, but they still have fur or hair. And then they also bear live young. So that means we give birth to live babies. They don't hatch out of eggs. However, there are always, those little exceptions to the rules, like platypi who lay eggs, but they're still warm-blooded. They still have fur and they still breathe through their lungs too. And the last one is we nurse our youngs, so we provide our young milk. So all five of these things is what makes a mammal a mammal. And so when we talk about marine mammals today, we are not going to talk about sea turtles, which are reptiles. We're not going to talk about birds because technically they're avian, but they're a break off of reptiles. We are going to talk about those warm-blooded, furry animals that give live birth and feed their babies milk and have to breach the surface to breathe air. And so mammals are both on land, in the air, and in water. Today, we're talking about the marine type, which means that they are a mammal that has adapted to live all or part of their lives in water. And specifically, we're talking about salt water. These animals also use a thick blubber to keep themselves warm, and they have to come to the surface for breathing. So groups of marine mammals in Puget Sound that we will potentially see here, especially in Poverty Bay and around the MaST Center, which is the kind of territory beaches that we patrol. So pinnipeds are going to be your seals or sea lions, those four-flippered friends. And then we've got cetaceans, which are your whales and your porpoises. So think of like dolphins, orcas. And then our mustelids, which are our sea otters and our ripper otters. And so these are just a small subset of the marine mammals that are in Washington, but these are specifically ones that we might be encountering here in our stranding area. So the first one is a harbor seal. So this is the most common marine mammal in this area. They get about 5 to 6 feet long, 300 pounds. So that is a lot of blubber on them. Again, these animals need to regulate their body temperature, so that thick blubber helps them stay insulated in this really cold water in Puget Sound. So the Puget Sound water is staying between 56 and like 65 degrees year round. So that thick blubber keeps them warm, it keeps them insulated when the temperatures do get colder. They do a thing called schlumping or glumping. It's like doing the worm down the beach. It's how they move. And so these animals, if you look in these photos, have really short front flippers. They're kind of for like holding on to something or maybe scratching up the beach, but their back hind legs are more stretched out behind their body. So their hips are rotated outwards. And so they can't run on the beach. They have to schlump or glump or do the worm down or up the beach to get back into the water, which their body is designed for swimming. Those back flippers go really well, glide very well, and are that motor in the water. So these animals do live on land and in the water. As you can see in some of these photos, they're hauled out. So that is getting out of the water where they will give birth to their pups. So their pups are going to be being born here in this area sometime between May and September. And that pup is going to nurse with that mom for just 4 to 6 weeks. That's all the time that this pup gets to learn from its mother how to be a seal. And so this is that really precious time where we do not want to interrupt that. We don't want to separate mom and baby because they need to be able to learn all those skills in order to survive. Because after 4 to 6 weeks, this cute little chubby harbor seal is then going to be on its own and have to fend for itself against predators, but also fish for food. That's when they're called winglings. And so that's another really critical time of if they're going to get fish, they need to get a lot of fish to keep that blubber on because mom's milk is about 50% fat. And so they're fattening up, but once mom is gone, they need to keep that weight on to keep them warm. So pups are left on the shoreline while mom's out feeding, doing other things, and the mom will come back periodically to feed that baby. And so with that milk being 50% fat, if that baby is abandoned or that mom does not come back to that baby because humans have gotten too close or we've interacted with their pup, they see us as a predator. And so they're going to save themselves, not risk their lives to come back for that pup because they can have a pup next year. Whereas this pup might not survive. It's a 50% chance that a harbor seal will actually make it through their first year. And so if that mom sees us interacting with them, they'll be abandoned, and we can actually see that drop in weight almost overnight. You can see them getting smaller. So again, really critical to leave our harbor seals on the beach because again, they're supposed to be on the beach, and making sure that our dogs are not getting close to them because there are bacteria in dog waste that can actually make them really sick, and so that they're not getting as big as they should. And then stuff that humans have, whether it is our trash or our food that we leave behind, can also make them sick. So harbor seal pups are unfortunately one of our most common calls because people are getting too close to them and then moms end up abandoning them. And so that's when we go out, assess the situation, and then try to help these animals to the best of our ability. The next species that are in our area are 2 different sea lions. So we've got California sea lions and Steller sea lion, also known as the northern sea lion. The difference between seals and sea lions is that harbor seals have no external ear flaps. So we've got external ear flaps just like sea lions do, but harbor seals have no external ear flap, and it's just a hole that you see right behind their eyes. And then with our sea lions, their flippers are rotated under their body. They can actually gallop down the beach and outrun you because of how their body is positioned. Their flippers are positioned underneath that weight. So California sea lions, we see a little bit more down in our area. Our northern sea lions are a little less common to us. They're more straight around the Fuca outer coast. But our California sea lions are going to be the smaller of the 2 sea lions, roughly 7 feet. These are the ones that vocalize. Our harbor seals are not going to bark at us. If you hear barking, that is the sea lions. We also typically only see males in this area, and it's between fall and spring. So they're hunting for food or they're young males looking for territory. And we often get calls about them sailing or rafting. and that's how they regulate their body temperature. So they stick their flippers out of the water, or sometimes just half their body and are out of the water. And then so our northern sea lions are going to be bigger, about 2 feet bigger and roughly 500 pounds more than our California sea lion. With both of them, they love to group up into colonies, so you'll see them together. You'll also see California sea lions and Steller sea lions hold out in a colony together. The males do tend to get territorial because they have their harem or group of females. Both of them will be vocal. So if you live next to one of their rookeries or where they give birth, their nurseries, it is very loud. But again, our California sea lions are going to be the ones down here in the Poverty Bay area, and our northern sea lions are going to be up north in the Puget Sound. So to tell the difference between the two species, California sea lions have a sagittal crest. It's the dome to their head, and our Steller sea lions are more flat. So I always say that the California sea lions, they've got the crest, so a C on top of their head, whereas our Stellers have more of a saddle. So think of a saddle that you would put on a horse. So crest for California, saddle for Stellers. Our next species of pinniped is our elephant seal. So again, seals, no external ear flaps, and their hips are rotated outwards from their body. These ones get pretty big, and these also have the big nose. So elephant seal, they get their name because of their long rostrum, trunk-like nose. Their back flippers make a cute little heart shape. That's how you can tell their flippers apart from our harbor seals, even though they get much larger. They do a catastrophic molt April through August, and so they're up on the beach, and from these pictures you can see kind of looks like they've got mange or fleas or some sort of skin bacteria going on. This is standard. This is typical. So they are trying to get all of that fur off their body, get their new coat of fur on as soon as possible, because that fur does add a barrier to protect them from the cold. But also, if you have like open sores and things going on your body, putting salt water on them kind of hurts a little bit. Most pupping occurs in California and Mexico. However, we've got a small population starting on Whidbey Island now. So you never know. We might have a much larger elephant seal population popping up here in Puget Sound over the next few years. So onto our otters. We've got two types of otters here in Puget Sound. One is very common, one is not so common anymore. So river otters, if you see an otter, especially here in middle to south Puget Sound, it's going to be a river otter. These are roughly 3 to 4 feet. So think of like a larger dog. They have 1 to 4 cubs in the springtime. And you won't see them swimming with them or holding onto them in the water. That's going to be our northern sea otters doing that. Their babies are usually back in their den, and then once they're able to swim, they're freely swimming on their own. They're often seen on shore in both fresh and saltwater environments. They're going to swim with their belly down. So think of a dog, again, swimming, usually solitary unless it's mating season and they've gathered up or they have their pups with them. And many waterfront property owners think that they're pests because of their nesting behavior. They're digging into things or they're getting into boats to provide those birthing sites and rearing sites for their babies. So very common to see river otters here, especially in Poverty Bay. We've got one that I know has been hanging around for the last couple years. So our northern sea otters are going to be much bigger, about 5 feet. They're only going to have a pup, one pup, every like 2 years. And they're going to hold that pup until that pup is able to swim and hold on to things. They also have the thickest fur in the world. You're constantly going to see them preening or rubbing their baby. And that's to provide oil to their fur to make sure that they do float. So their fur is the densest fur in the entire world. It's 1 million hairs per square inch. Humans have about 1,000. So that thick fur not only protects them from the cold waters, but by putting the oil on it, it repels the water, so it keeps them buoyant or floating. And so they're trying to preen their babies and themselves by rubbing their cheeks or rubbing their arms to add that oil onto them. They're going to usually swim on their back, just like in this picture, and they're usually going to be in large rafts. So they like to group up together, either holding hands or wrapping themselves in kelp to stay near each other. These are also endangered. So the northern sea otters range is Oregon all the way up to Alaska. There's another southern species that's a California and lower, warmer water. Our northern sea otters are endangered. And in Puget Sound, kind of proper, there's estimated to be kind of only 2 sea otters, and they're both males. So outer coast, we have a little bit more, Stranding, a little bit more. But here in our area, it would be very, very rare to see a sea otter here. All right, so on to our porpoises. Dolphins versus porpoises. Dolphins are very social, love to live in larger ponds, whereas our porpoises are solitary, but will group up during feeding season. So if you've been down to the MaST Aquarium or Poverty Bay recently, you have seen a bunch of harbor porpoises together, which again, kind of unusual for them. So the harbor porpoises are roughly human size. They've got a shorter, rounder rostrum to them, and they tend to be 1, 2, or 3 in a group because you'll have the mom, the calf from the previous year, the yearling, because they nurse for about a year, and a potential new baby. And they have their babies May through September around here, and they're going to chase the forage fish and our herring around the sound. So if you follow the fish, you'll see these harbor porpoises. And the easiest way to spot them is look for the critter glitter. So look out into the waves, and if you see something sparkling and it's this tiny little dorsal fin, this kind of dark blue, that's going to be our harbor porpoise. So our Dall's porpoise is bigger, but it's also black and white, and its back dorsal fin is much taller than the harbor porpoises. When we get calls about Dall's porpoise, most people have mistaken them as an orca calf because they're about the size of an orca calf. However, yes, they are black and white, but they're missing the saddle patch and the eye patch in order to make them look more like an orca. These also like to bow ride, so riding in front or behind boats, and they swim really fast. So when they're swimming, they'll actually shoot water up that kind of looks like a rooster tail, where our harbor porpoises will not do that. All right, so we also have whales. Our big ones here are our gray whales. So gray whales get roughly up to 40, 45 feet. And you'll see them come in the intertidal zone to feed. I want to say it was like November, we had a gray whale right off the boardwalk here in Redondo. And so we have our Seattle Sounders. They're the ones who come into Puget Sound to feed. So they'll feed for a while and then go back down to Baja California. They use us as a stopover. Others will keep going and go up to the Arctic to feed, but a few of them have learned to feed in here. So if you're a Sounders soccer or football team fan, I'm sorry to say, but your mascot is the wrong whale. It should be the gray whales because the orcas here are the southern resident orcas. The big / transient orcas are the offshore orcas. So we have 3 different types. In our area here, we'll see the transient / bigs and the residents. And so with these, they've got that eye patch in the front, the saddle patch in the back, and the dorsal. And depending on their shapes and angles is how you can tell the 3 apart. Very rare do we see them close to us here at the MaST Center. They like to usually hug on Vashon and Maury Island and go on the other passage. Humpback whales. We do have humpback whales here. These are going to get roughly 50 feet, and these are the acrobatics. So they like to jump out or breach out of the water. We had one about 2 years ago at the end of Vashon Island that was feeding and then came up this direction and started jumping out of the water and doing tail flaps for us. So gray whales, they're going to feed in the intertidal zone, orcas around here are going to chase our marine mammals and our salmon around, and then our humpbacks are going to be the lunge feeders where they're gulping up water, but they're also going to jump out of the water too. So all of these marine mammals are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, which made it illegal to feed, harass, touch, approach, hunt, or kill, or capture these animals. Basically, if you're doing anything that makes it change its behavior or harming that animal, you are breaking the federal law. And with this law, it also says that we must maintain a minimum of 100 yards away at all times. If it has a calf or it's resting, especially when it comes to our whales, porpoises, we have to stay 200 yards away from them. And this is also in a boat, a kayak, paddleboard, if you're swimming, have to abide by these laws. People ask me all the time, well, what if it approaches me? These laws are in place for humans. These animals don't know about laws. We're entering their home. We need to make sure that we use our brains and our best judgment to stay or back away from those animals. If for some reason you have a concern that somebody might be breaking this law, you can always contact your local stranding team and we can come out and assess the situation and talk to the parties involved. So 100 yards away is a full football field away, which in some cases is really hard to do, especially with Redondo Beach. I don't think there is 100 yards from here to the top of the hill that we can get to stay away from the animals on the beach. So again, you're trying to get as far away from that animal as possible to not change its behavior. And so with that, sometimes we can cause animals to become stressed or change their behavior, but some of the behaviors that we see are normal. So we don't have to go out or check on those animals. So one common misconception of animal behavior is rafting. So seals and sea lions, they need to regulate their body temperature. The water is an insulator. They also have a lot of fat on them or blubber and hair. And so their temperatures are going to fluctuate with the season. And one way for them to cool down or even warming up, they're going to get out of that water and bask themselves in the sun. To cool down, they'll stick that flipper in the air. And some days I see them kind of just like twirling around like ballerinas with their arms in the air. And that's going to expose the blood vessels that are in their flipper to cool them down. Think of like kangaroos. Kangaroos are licking their arms to have that evaporation cool down their blood, which then circulates to their body. Same thing here. It's just they're using the air temperature to do so. Some people will call in because they think they are entangled. One of the best things that you can do is watch to see if they're exhibiting entanglement where they're not moving out of that area, they're fighting with ropes or anything like that. But again, that rafting or sailing, that flipper in the air is a normal or typical behavior. But again, if you feel like you need somebody else out there to assess the situation, you can always call the stranding team. Next common misconception is the difference between seals and sea lions. I can't count the number of times I've had somebody bark at a seal, hoping it would bark back at them. Again, seals are not going to vocalize. Pups will vocalize back to their mothers, but the adults are not going to vocalize. They're usually solitary creatures, and they're going to spend most of their time hanging out on the beach or in the water. It's like 50-50. Sea lions, they are going to bark. They're going to vocalize, and they're highly territorial. So don't want to get near them because, again, they can walk and they can outrun humans on the beach. Is the seal stuck on the beach? No. So seals and sea lions regularly use the shore for their habitat, whether it is sleeping, they're warming up. So think of, basking in the sun, molting. So they're shedding that fur, or they're giving birth. Their babies don't know how to swim right away. They don't have the muscle structure to be able to keep up with the current. Also, they don't have enough blubber just yet to keep themselves warm. So you can usually see haul outs like this around the area. And so if they're on the beach, they're supposed to be on the beach. Here's more pictures of seals on the beach because sometimes they look like they are stranded. So I assure you all of these in these photos were fine. and they were alive. So the one in the middle here looks like it might not be alive. It is. So they will sleep, and they will sleep very hard. So they will almost look like they might be dead. But they're resting, they're taking a nap. Sometimes they will be half in, half out of the water, again, regulating that body temperature. Some of them will move up against the logs, trying to camouflage or blend in, give themselves a barrier from their predators. And then here is a newly born pup with its mom on the beach. There's two of them. One was just born, and the other one is currently nursing. So again, they're allowed to hang on the beach. That's their home. They're both water and land animals. This is one of my favorites. This is the banana pose or banana-ing. If you see this pose or posture, it actually means this animal is doing really well. I don't know how many of you have tried to do this pose. I myself have tried to do this pose, and the muscles that are needed to do this, I cannot do this pose. So if this animal has enough strength and energy in order to hold its head up while its legs are also up, means that animal is okay. Some people feel like it's twisting or there's an injury, it's been hit. Banana pose or banana-ing is a really good sign when it comes to harbor seals. We usually, when we're out there trying to figure out if a harbor seal pup is still nursing or if it's hydrated enough, is we look for the rings around the eyes. So our harbor seals, if they're healthy, have a beautiful smoky eye around them, that ring. That means they've got enough moisture or hydration in their body for them to leach that moisture out of their eye and onto their fur. And so with that, good sign. The other type that you could get is either like a green or a yellow or an orange. That is a bacteria infection. So if it's a black, smoky, or gray ring, we're good to go. But if it starts to turn colors, that's when that animal would probably need to be taken in to rehabilitation to get antibiotics before it can go back out. So here's Cholula here. She had gorgeous smoky eyes all the time. Another common misconception is that all harbor seals are going to be a certain color. When it comes to our harbor seals in our area, they come in all different sizes and coloration. So in here you can see we've got white, or what is called lanugo. And then we've got our speckled spotted, we've got black, and we even got more of like this yellow tan going on. All of your harbor seals are going to be in a lanugo or white fur form in utero. So when they're still inside the mother, it can be shed while it's still in utero before it's born, or it can be shed within a few days up to like a week after that baby is born. And then that's when they'll start to change colors and get more of that speckling pattern to them. Another one is the harbor seal has been abandoned on the beach. The pup has. Sometimes that is the case. Sometimes the mom has gone away and hasn't come back. But sometimes they're weanlings, so they're already away from mom and they're just hauling out. They're trying to conserve energy. They're trying to warm up. They're just taking a break. Some of them have also not developed that fear response of humans just yet. Again, right? Like you're just born up to 6 weeks with your mom. Mom's not going to have a lot of time to teach you everything. And so they slowly develop that fear response. But if you do think that baby is abandoned, one good thing is to stay back from that animal, because if mom is in the area, she will not come back with loud noises, large crowds, or even, predators, aka humans or dogs in the area. And as a stranding team coordinator, we will send out people out there to kind of watch to see if mom does come back to feed that pup. All right, so wildlife viewing, how do we do this safely? Because ecotourism is such a huge thing here in Washington. A lot of tourists are coming here to see our wildlife. We get a lot of revenue from the people coming into the area. And so one, keep your distance. Again, it's federal law to stay at least 100 yards away from these animals. Bring your binoculars so that you can see them. your cameras with a lens on them. Even my phone has a pretty good camera on it to be able to see those animals from that distance. Also, another thing, please put your pet on a leash. On these beaches, especially in Seattle, dogs are not allowed on the beach. But the beaches down this way and all other areas, public areas, dogs are supposed to be on the leash. There are certain dog parks that will allow your dogs into the water, but these public areas, your dog needs to be on a leash. One, for its safety, because if they come in contact with a sea lion that's trying to guard its territory, its food, or its pup, it could potentially get hurt. It could get diseases, it could get injuries, but also your dog could also injure the pups of the harbor seals or sea lions by biting it or even pooping next to it. And then that poop bacteria gets into its system, then causes parasites. And so it's just best for both pups that we stay safely apart. There have been cases where harbor seal pups have been taken in due to bites from dogs. And then we've got a rule of thumb, which we'll talk here in a little bit, but it's using your thumb in order to gauge whether you're too close or not. So keeping a safe distance. One way to determine if you're too close is the animal's behavior. If you look at it and it's looking at you, you do not want to get any closer. That means it's registered you. You're in its area and it sees that there's something going on that it might not like. If it's starting to fidget, so squirm just a little bit, move, turn towards you to get a better look, that means you're definitely too close. You need to back up. Again, 100 yards away, some of these beaches, it's really hard to do, but you need to back away from that animal because you're technically harassing it by making it change its behavior. Also, if it runs away, you need to leave that area, especially because that animal might need to come back to that site or that beach. If it has a pup or if it's tired and needs to rest, you have now gone into its home and its territory and bugged it to make it leave. So that rule of thumb, you take your thumb, put it out over top of that animal. If you are too close, meaning you can see that animal all around your thumb, you need to back on up. If you take your thumb and put it straight out and you can cover that animal completely, you are at a safe distance. So again, use your rule of thumb. If that animal sticks out at any point when your thumb's trying to cover it, you are too close. So why do we need to keep our distance? One, personal safety. They can definitely hurt us. Again, sea lions can gallop and run down the beach and can outrun you. All of these animals have bacteria and diseases that they carry that can transfer over to humans. Changes in behavior might interrupt them from coming back to that location, might make them abandon their baby, abandon a food source. So we definitely don't want to change their behavior, and especially when it comes to the pups, because those pups have such precious few weeks with those moms that they need to stay there. So what is a stranding? How do you know if something has stranded and that you need to call somebody? An animal is stranded if it is dead on the beach or the shore or in our waters. So it doesn't matter where it's at. If it is dead, that is technically a stranding. If it's alive and it's on the beach or shore and can't make it back to the water, so that's either a barrier in its way, an injury, or just not able to get back to its natural habitat. It could be where they're able to return to the water, but they either can't move well, they've got entanglements, or some other human interaction with it that would warrant a response. And then if it's in the water but unable to return to its natural habitat on its own power. So there was a case last year where there was a juvenile humpback that got stuck in a marina. It just couldn't find its way back out. That would technically be a live stranding in the water. So how should you react if you think something might be stranded or stranding and you want to help? So one, again, always keep your distance. Do not get close to that animal. Never feed them, because things that humans are eating is not what they should be eating. Don't cover them up, because by putting blankets or a towel or clothes on them, you could actually be making them overheat. And please don't pour water on them. I know in a lot of Hollywood media, you see you needing to pour water on harbor porpoises, dolphins, and whales. When it comes to a lot of these animals, if they're out of the water, it's because they're trying to get out of the water. We don't need to put more water on top of them. If there's any obvious signs of injuries or threat of human interaction, so you can see in these photos down here, we've got entanglement in 2 of these. We've got a person way too close to this precious little pup, which could also cause habituation to humans, meaning it thinks humans are good and continues to interact with them. And then with this elephant seal pup, you can see that somebody was trying to feed it food, which also is not good. And so if for any reason you think an animal needs help, please call the Stranding hotline and the Stranding coordinator. So if you're in my territory, I will ask you questions like, what's the location? What do we have? And get details so that I can come out there and assess the situation. So how can you help while all this is going on? 1, picking up the litter in the trash. That helps to keep those animals from becoming entangled. But if there's already an animal on the beach, we don't want them to run into those human obstructions. So getting all of that human or debris off that area so that they don't ingest it, they don't get entangled in it or cut themselves on it. Respect the roped off areas. So we use caution tape. Sometimes it says share the shore. Sometimes we put giant signs up. Don't cross that area, please. And then also, if you're asked to move out of the area, please move quickly and quietly as possible so as we don't disturb that animal that we're responding to. And then while you're out there, help educate the other community members who might be coming up and asking questions or who might be getting too close. You're our greatest asset. You are the ones out there all the time, interacting with the shorelines and interacting with your community, that you can tell them about the laws and why we need to stay back from them. And then know your local stranding network. So here we are, the Marine Mammal Stranding Team of the MaST Center. That is our phone number for our stranding line. So call anytime you think there is a problem or you're just not sure. You can always give us a call. And so the network is not just us, because there is a lot of shoreline in Washington. So we are a part of the West Coast Marine Mammal Stranding Network. And so it's a lot of different organizations covering all of Pacific Northwest. And so on this page here, there is the hotline for the West Coast. If you call that number, it will go to the party at that location. And so you could be in a different territory. Say you're on the outer coast in Grays Harbor. If you're not sure who the local responder is, call the national hotline and the information will get to the correct party. So this is the number that you want to save in your phone. If you are just local and stay very local, you can definitely keep our number in your phone, but I would make sure that you save the national hotline in there. So with us, we've got a smaller territory. Some other places have bigger territories. North of us is seal sitters. South of us is fish and wildlife. And so you can see it's kind of color coded all around the sound here. So if you think an animal has stranded, what do you report? 1, please give us your name. Give us the time that the animal might have stranded, because sometimes we'll get a call and they saw the animal strand in the morning, but they called us in the afternoon and the animal is already gone. Also give us your phone number, please, because sometimes we have to call back the reporting party to get more information from them. Also tell us your city, your state, the beach, where at on that beach. Sometimes here in Redondo, you can kind of see all of Redondo in one view, but at like Dash Point or even Seahurst, you can't see all of the beach all at once. So giving us a very precise location of it's north of the bathrooms or it's at this GPS coordinate really helps us. And then if you know, giving us the species ID. We understand it can be hard to determine if it's a harbor seal or a sea lion that's out there, but if you can at least tell us it's one of those 2 species, it greatly helps us out. And then what do you see that makes you think that it's in trouble? Describe the behavior, describe if there's anything in the area that would be causing it to become stressed. We kind of want to know everything that's going on so that we can better prepare to help this animal once we get out there. So where does the MaST Center come in all of this? One, we help do the first response. So our territory is from Dash Point Lighthouse all the way to the West Seattle Ferry Terminal. So we cover about 14 to 15 miles of shoreline covering Poverty Bay. And so we'll get out there, we record the location, confirm that it is a marine mammal, check on the condition. So if it looks like it's okay to us, we'll just sit out there and kind of babysit it. And by babysit, I mean we babysit the humans to make sure they're abiding by the laws, making sure that it's okay. And if it's a pup, seeing if the mom does come back. We also take photos so that if we have to come back out again, we can see the changes in condition or see if it's gotten better or worse. If it has died, we'll also take it in and do a necropsy. So necropsy is a autopsy, which means human to human on an animal. So human to animal necropsy. And so try to figure out why it died so that we can better educate the public, because unfortunately, most of our dead animals come from some sort of human interaction. And then if it is a live animal and we just need to babysit it, we put our guardians out there who are educators. So they're going to continue to educate the public and watch over that animal. On very rare occasions, will we relocate those animals because they tend to come back to those spots. But if that animal is sick or injured, we can actually take it in for a health assessment with SR3, which is the Marine Hospital in Des Moines here. So a lot of it is public outreach and education, but we do take in animals or the deceased animals to try to figure out what's going on. So we work with a lot of different other organizations in that network, like Department of Fish and Wildlife, SR3, and NOAA, who gives us the permit to be able to do this work. So where does SR3 come in all of this? They can assist with the strandings in the Pacific Northwest, so Washington and Oregon. They are the only marine hospital in the Pacific Northwest. So they respond, but also they help rehabilitate these animals. So this is Mermaid. She was born next to the boat ramp, had her placenta still attached here in Redondo. She was the perfect harbor seal, taken into rehab by the stranding team, was raised up, given food, got stronger, graduated fishing school, so she learned how to fish on her own, and then was released at Dash Point State Park there. So with SR3, they are able to get these animals into care, get them back and rehabilitated and back into the wild where they should be. They also take in sea turtles, sea lions, and even a harbor porpoise. So they're doing a lot of great work there. And then the last thing that they also do is research. So they're trying to figure out where these animals are going in Puget Sound, and they're tracking them. So some of them do have trackers, some of them have poker chips on the head. Other rescue places will also potentially brand or mark their animals with tags. And so if you see a marine mammal with some sort of marking on it, that's also a time to call us too. So getting information on what kind of tag it was, if there's a special number or color with it, you can send that information into us, because those are good sightings that go into our research that helps us understand how these animals are faring in the wild after rehabilitation. So it does not take an expert to report to the Stranding Network. So anyone can report. Our hotline number will contact the local stranding organization. So that 1-866-767-6114. There's a QR code up on your screen right now that you can use your phone, and this will download the number into your contact information. So we make it super easy. And so responses are not always immediate, depending on how many other responses that we're dealing with or equipment that we might need to gather, or how far away from the animal we are at that time. But do know we have noted it and that we are doing our best to be able to get out there and respond to it. Many times the animal will need to be observed for a period of time. So a lot of our harbor seal pups, we want to make sure that they're staying with mom. So we will stay out there and serve them until we can get a better assessment of the situation. And all calls are important. Even if you're like, I'm not sure, please call in to us. And always keep a safe distance and encourage others to do the same. So again, stay away and keep your pets on a leash. Watch for that concerning behavior, injuries, coughing, emaciation. They look a little skinny. And then call that Marine Mammal Stranding Network number, which is good for all of the Pacific Northwest, the West Coast. And then make sure you're helping others stay away and keeping the situation away from the animal that needs our help. So again, scan this QR code, automatically downloads our contact information into your phone. So that's it. Any questions?
That was awesome. Thank you, Aeriel. We do have a question from the chat, and if anyone is watching and has a question that you would like to ask Aeriel, feel free to leave them in the YouTube chat. We'll be monitoring that for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. The question is, are jet skis dangerous for marine mammals?
Yes. So we actually had an incident today when we were out on our dock watching boaters out there. In the boats, you're supposed to stay 100 yards away from those animals. When it comes to our orcas, their actually distance is, last year it was 400 yards. It has now increased. It's doubled away from our orcas to give them more space. And you're actually supposed to idle or even shut off your vehicles during that interaction if they're within 100 yards of you. And that is because one, jet skis move pretty fast. They don't have brakes. Neither do boats. You can't stop when you need to stop, right? You're going to continue gliding. When it comes to our harbor seals, they do a behavior that's called spy hopping. So they just pop their heads up out of the water to kind of assess the situation around them and then go right back down. If that animal decides to spy hop and your jet ski is coming, it's a really hard, both interactions, to swerve or get out of the way. And so we do end up seeing collision or trauma, head trauma from getting hit by jet skis or boats. So speed is a factor out there, but also making sure if you do see animals in the area that you're giving them a safe distance. And especially with jet skis and boats, there's a lot of noise pollution happening underwater. If anybody wants to hear noise pollution, go to Orca Sound, and they have hydrophones at certain points around Puget Sound, and you can just hear all of it. That these animals might not be able to locate you because there's just so much other ambient white noise that they don't know that you're right above them. But yeah, jet skis are a problem for sure, but just boats in general are a problem for collisions. Yeah.
For sure. So another question is, if I see an animal on the beach, obviously there are marine mammals that are protected by law. How do I know whether an animal is protected? If it's endangered or, if it's just protected under specific laws, how do I know that? Where can I go to find that information?
Yeah, so NOAA has all of the regulation information for the federal law for the Marine Mammal Protection Act is up on NOAA's website. So NOAA, NOAA, and they will have that information about specifically the marine mammals. So those are the animals in the saltwater. When it comes to more state regulations, that's the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife will have those regulations on their website. And so almost all animals are protected unless they are a sport animal. You can get a hunting license for them, but otherwise all animals, you're not allowed to interact with wildlife, and you're not allowed to feed said wildlife too.
Fantastic. And so what's the best way to tell if a pup's been abandoned on the beach? The harbor seal pup. How do I know if I'm looking out, I don't see any mom, but like, are there any signs to look for?
Yeah, it's even hard. I mean, with years of experience is what you kind of need to build up to be able to see those signs. But with a harbor seals, one thing, if the pup is on the beach and they're a new baby and they have their umbilical cord still attached, or you see a red spot where their umbilical or where their belly button will be, and it's red, that means it's open still. It hasn't closed up or scabbed over. And if the mom is not there taking care of it, or if you don't see the mom come back within like a 12 to 24-hour period, that's when we need to take that harbor seal in right away. Because with the umbilical cord or the opening to that belly button, it's a direct line into their digestive system, which is their immune system at that point. And so that's one way we would take them in, is especially if we don't see mom interacting with a newborn baby at any of those points. Also, if that pup has what is called a peanut head, so normal head that then goes in and you can see shoulders, that means that pup is a little emaciated. It's a little underweight. If you can see its hip bones, it's definitely underweight. And so we want big, happy, fat seals here in Puget Sound. You want to go from head to the shoulders. You don't want to see any neck with them. You don't want to see their hip bones. So if you're seeing anything that looks a little underweight, a little skinny, again, peanut head, that is a time to call us, because that usually means mom hasn't been around to feed it, or it's a weanling that's just not knowing how to fish correctly, or it could have a lot of parasites in its stomach or bacteria from dog feces that's just not allowing it to keep nutrients or weight on its body. Also, if that animal does any sort of like shivering motion, these animals don't really shiver. That could be a sign of seizures that are going on, so a neurological disorder. If the animal keeps going back out and coming back in, going back out, coming back in, that could be a sign that there's something wrong, that it wants to be out there but can't be out there. If a harbor seal pup is on the beach and it can't move, or if it moves and it looks like it's having a really hard time, I know they slump, glump, slash roll down the beach, but we've had ones who've had injuries and just can't move on one side. If you see any blood or any entanglement or any injuries, that is definitely a time to call in. But if that harbor seal pup is happy, fat, no neck, we see a harbor seal in the area that comes back and feed, because just because there is an adult harbor seal in the water does not mean that's mom. And it also does not mean that mom is coming back and feeding. So we kind of have to, again, babysit and watch and see if mom does come back to that pup. But happy fat ones that are bananaing on the beach, that don't have blood or human things on them, we know those are safe and good to go. But again, if anybody has any questions, our hotline, you can also text or email us pictures or videos, so we can also kind of assess the situation too.
Awesome. So it sounds like when in doubt, call, and then we'll see how it goes.
Yes,
Perfect.
for sure. Yep.
That's great. Let's see. So you said that sea lions can run as fast as humans. How fast, what is their top speed, and like how fast can they go?
So like anywhere between like 15 and 20 miles an hour is how fast they're gonna run. They are full powered muscle, and their flippers are designed to like get underneath their body. Even their back hips are rotated on their body. So they're going to push. I mean, they're 800 pounds of just muscle. And these bulls, or the males, are highly territorial. If they see you as a threat, they're going to come after you. And their teeth are a good, 2 to 3 inch long canines, and serrated and full of bacteria. So yeah, you don't want a chance outrunning a sea lion on the beach, especially if it's sand or cobbly. I don't even think Usain Bolt would be able to outrun these things on the beach. Yeah.
That's slightly terrifying.
Yes.
And you talked about sea lion, or not sea lions, sea otters, and how we've got the northern and the southern populations, and that the northern populations, especially here in Washington, are fairly low. And they're primarily out in the strait. Have there been any thoughts at reintroduction into the Puget Sound, or can you talk a little bit about that?
So right now, Oregon is kind of doing this. So northern sea otters, again, Oregon on up to Alaska, southern sea otters are California area. And so they have transplanted some from Alaska to the Oregon coast, because their population dwindled, our population dwindled. during colonization in the fur trade. So they wanted the furs because the dense fur kept them warm during the winter, but also because of the oils, it was basically waterproof. So it was a good raincoat here in Washington. However, they basically extirpated or killed them off to almost extinction in the state. And so Oregon transplanting the same species, but from a different state down into their area in hopes that they would integrate with the population that was there and continue having and increasing that population. And so far, they've seen a success from what I can tell in news and publications, and even have seen that they are helping with the European green crab invasive species populations by eating them. So I am not sure if Washington is got anything like in line to do, but I know that, we're kind of watching Oregon and seeing how well that turns out, which A+ to them right now, apparently. That I would assume Washington would follow suit in that way. But again, with all of that, there's a lot of authorities involved and a lot of planning and background that has to go into transplanting. Again, it's the same species, but these animals from a different area into this territory to make sure, one, that they stay here, two, that they're able to stay here with habitat, food resources, and things like that. So.
Yeah. Sounds promising though.
Yes, it really
Yeah.
does.
So far, so good. That's great. So my last question is, say someone who's watching is local and they are interested in getting involved in the marine mammal stranding, say they're, within the MaST's responding area, how would they go about doing that?
So there are a few organizations that are part of the Stranding Network that do use volunteers to be able to go out to these strandings. So with us, you can become part of the marine mammal stranding team itself. We've got a couple different levels of involvement. The first step, though, is to become a volunteer here at the MaST Center. And then you would go into an orientation, so you get kind of a better understanding of what we do as a team, what our permit allows us to do. And then you get training on how to talk to the people, the regulations, biofacts of how big do things get, what do they eat, and then get training on how to capture harbor seal pups if they do need to become patients at SR3 or the Marine Mammal Hospital. And so there are our guardians, which are the educators. They're the ones out there helping to educate the public, keep people back, monitor that animal to see if it needs us to intervene. But usually at that point, we know that it's okay. We're just kind of watching it a little bit. We then have our first responders. So those are the ones that go out to the scene first, trying to figure out, again, what is that animal? Does it need our help? And assessing that situation as quickly as possible. And if it needs to be brought in, it's brought in as quickly as possible. And so those have to be 18 years or older because we are interacting with sick and injured wildlife and transporting them. And then we also have our necropsy team. So those are the ones who help us go through the animal both externally and internally, trying to figure out what went wrong or what might have caused the death. We had one recently on Redondo that we did a necropsy on and found out that it was a gunshot victim, had bullet wounds going through its vertebrae. So it does help us understand why these animals die and be able to educate the public a little bit more about those specific situations. And then we also have our articulation team. So after we necropsy these animals, we will flens them. So that's removing all of the external parts to keep the skeleton. And then we compost them, which if you've been to the MaST Center, we've got a little graveyard at the end of the dock where we are composting these animals for 6 to 9 months to clean those bones. So we let the bugs do all the dirty work. And then we pull them out, put them in a bath in a baking soda peroxide solution, and then kind of puzzle piece them back together of how they were originally. Some of them get hung in the ceiling, like our 38-foot gray whale, or sea lions, or harbor porpoises, or otters. Others get put in what is called bones in a box kit that then we can take as educational tools to classrooms to talk about human wildlife conflict and marine mammal protections. So lots of ways to get involved. The first thing is just, talk to us at the MaST Center or one of those Stranding Network leads. Seal Sitters is in West Seattle and they use volunteers. Port Angeles uses volunteers, Port Townsend uses volunteers. So just to take a look at where you're at in Washington, Oregon, and see who is your stranding coordinator or response team in that area, give them a call, ask if they use volunteers. And there are quite a few of us that do use volunteers.
That's awesome. And if there are no further questions in the chat, I don't see any. If you have one, you have about 60 seconds to drop it in the chat. Otherwise, if you have questions and you're watching this as a recording, you can reach out to the MaST team at mast@highline.edu. And we will be back for Science on the Sound in May on the 3rd. It's the first Saturday of the month at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. So thank you, Aeriel, for sharing all about all the marine mammals and awesome work that's being done on our coastline. And